Westbound, it's a multi-vehicle crash between exits 39A and 39. Right lane is closed. Now here's the forecast.
Temperatures remain cool this afternoon, only in the upper 50s and low 60s, with a lot of clouds and a few scattered showers around, a light northeast wind. Tonight, we'll see rain and showers becoming more numerous and more widespread for a while, and then tapering back down during the pre-dawn hours. There'll be some areas of fog out there too tonight with lows in the 50s. Remaining cloudy Tuesday. There could be a lingering shower, highs in the upper 50s to low 60s. Partly sunny Wednesday, the high near 70. Mostly sunny Thursday, the high around 75. I'm meteorologist Bob Cox in the WTIC Weather
sunny
Center.
Wednesday,
the high near 70. Mostly sunny Thursday.
S&P is down 63. NASDAQ down 334. 60 degrees and raining in Hartford. I'm Greg Little, WTIC 1080 News.
Cape Cod Fence Company has the best selection of play sets in Connecticut. From the Monkey Tower to the Lion's Den, your kids will enjoy hours of fun outside. Our inventory is extensive and ready to install. Call 860-673-3211 or visit CapeCodFence.com. CapeCodFence.com.
In my journey, I've met many people who have struggled, but their brilliance and their creativity has been largely discredited due to the diagnosis that was given.
Ricky Godoy was a confident, outgoing entrepreneur who refused to let his diagnosis of mental illness define him. Ricky's Compass is a 501c3 nonprofit focused on shattering the stigma that surrounds mental health, and they want to give you a platform to share your mental health journey. Visit rickyscompass.org today and shatter the stigma that surrounds mental illness.
Columbia Dental Same-Day Dental Center in Manchester is the place for new teeth in one day. Snap or clip-on, removable or fixed, all done in one location. Call 860-645-0111 or visit columbiadental.com.
It's a win-win-win.
Todd Feinberg, now 2 till 6 on WTIC News Talk 1080.
So this guest needs a little introduction. Fun conversation coming your way, though. You know, I like talking to the prisoners. I have Leibowitz and others on, you know, his co-author is on a regular basis. Brent McCall comes on. Not as often as Leibowitz, but he's on. And others occasionally. And the reason I do that is because we get to see how government works when it has its druthers. When the thick concrete walls not only keep the prisoners in, but they keep the public out. They keep the information from flowing. They keep the politicians protected while they incubate their dream vision of what a society that they create and control 100% would look like. So I find it really informative for us to learn more about that environment. That's part one of this introduction. Part two is this morning I'm at the gym and I listened to the New Yorker podcast from Thursday last week, the Politics and More podcast, and they have recurring nightmares on Rikers Island. And I listen to that. It's about abuse, neglect, mistreatment by corrections officers and the facilities administrators towards prisoners, despite promises by city and state officials to reform Rikers. This year alone, 12 people held there have died, 2 in the past week, and at least 5 by suicide. And that was fascinating. I thought, wow, this Rikers thing is out of control, way worse than even the system in Connecticut. And then I went back and listened to the Daily, the New York Times podcast, and they had a podcast last year about Rikers. I started getting really intrigued. All this while I'm on the treadmill this morning, before I even leave the gym. I had this whole thing buzzing in my head, and then I remembered Reese. And I said, I've got to call Reese and see if Reese will come on the air, because Reese worked at the same radio station as I did in Boston. I don't know, like 15 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that. So Reese Hopkins joins us now on WTIC so he can talk about a fascinating experience having to do with Rikers that he had. Hello there, Reese.
Hey, Todd. How are you, sir?
I'm rocking. I'm excited to have you on. Thank you for doing this.
And I appreciate you asking me to.
So you went into that. You went into that Rikers for. Well, let me just back up a little bit. One of the stories that they mentioned on this New Yorker podcast was one they had written years ago about I think it was a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old boy who had was alleged to have stolen a backpack and was taken and thrown into Rikers, spent 3 years in solitary confinement at Rikers without ever going to trial, and then was sprung after people found out what was going on. And it became a public outrage, I guess. And then he committed suicide after being released. And I thought, wow, that's what made me think of you, because you spent like 2.5 years in Rikers, right?
I sure did. 2 years, 5 months to be exact. And, you know, a lot of people don't think of Rikers Island unless it is what they consider a very notorious case in New York City. We don't even talk about that place unless there's something horrible that goes along with it. But the objective...
Yeah, it's like Alcatraz.
Yeah, exactly. In New York City politics, especially the criminal justice system, or the criminal justice business, as I like to call it, in New York, especially in New York City, Rikers Island plays a huge role in sentencing alleged perpetrators, if you will. The objective is to put you through the most heinous of conditions while you are being detained. And those conditions are so deplorable that you are willing to take any plea deal that they give you, because it is so horrible to exist in that space. So mind you, I was there 13 months before they offered me my first deal.
Yeah.
And it was time served, and I told them to go spit.
Well, wait. Why did they wait that long? I mean, if the idea is this is a factory to create convictions without ever having a trial, why would it take that long? Why would they wait 13 months before they're offering deals?
It took that long because it took that long for CNN to actually come and interview me. So I had to get the press involved in my case in order for them to even consider it. I was there a little more than 13 months, let's say about St. Patrick's Day, when CNN did an expose on my arrest and me being in jail. And when I produced to CNN evidence that I didn't live in New York at the time of the crime, they were then offering me a plea deal to take time served. And I told them, no, take me to trial. So then I proceeded to wait another year and 4 months before that happened.
I've often wondered about that whole aspect of our criminal justice system, the idea that a speedy trial can take years for, basically the process gets front-loaded with charges, and nobody really examines the evidence to see if there's any reason to be holding somebody for years in prison. And you were held at Rikers because for 2.5 years because you didn't have bail money, right?
$300,000 cash is what they asked for.
Which is an extreme amount of money, obviously, and most people don't have that handy to get themselves out of a lockup, which gives a lot of leverage in this deal-making scheme.
Right. And the objective is to, you know, I'm a mild-mannered guy. I'd never committed a crime before in my life. This is the first time I was ever charged with anything remotely this horrible. And before I even got arrested, Todd, I was of the ilk that would say, hey, you wouldn't be in there if you didn't do something wrong. Until you haven't done something wrong and you end up in there. And you end up in there and you see exactly the inner workings of this business. And again, back to the line I said earlier about the criminal justice business, is that the motive of the prosecution in this case, let's not even get into the public defenders. The objective of the prosecution in this case is to get as many convictions as they possibly can, even if they're via a deal, for whatever political or personal gain that said ADA has for their future. That's what they're using every stiff in the Rikers Island.
Yeah, it's all pegs in their in their book
resume builder.
And if they can do it without going to trial and without spending money.
Absolutely.
And without taking time, they can really pack those things in.
Absolutely. And that's what
the most interesting. Yes. The reason I wanted to have you on is because what I learned today about Rikers, this is pretty much all today, is that Rikers Island, and I'll just say that part of my fascination with studying politics is the rigged system that Democrats have built by creating public sector unions, and those public sector unions creating a partnership through which power that belongs in the hands of the people is given to a special interest group. And then the people get sold out to the special interest group by the Democrats, and that gives them, it's sort of like they get to have a church. You know, it's the rigged system that the founders didn't want and I guess didn't anticipate in this particular scheme. So I'm anti-union in a big way because I believe in democratic systems, and the only reason I can see to have public sector unions is as a way to rig the democratic system so it no longer works for the people. And I think a lot of the frustrations we face today, such as police departments that are violent towards citizens, the Black Lives Matter movement being motivated by them, that's about the rigged system. That's about the special interest deals that protect police from facing the music for malfeasance or even being questioned on it. So anyway, so I listened to Rikers Island, the story of Rikers Island, and what I hear is unions that are so empowered that the prisons are entirely unrun, and they just have fallen into a way of operating that is devoid of influence by any management scheme or oversight by a benevolent government trying to do good. There is no good done in these prisons. They are grotesque distortions of any notion that we live in a civilized society, that our elected officials would oversee these systems. And people like Mayor de Blasio, a socialist reformer, comes into power and gets told he has to fix this, and he does nothing. And that's usually the way it goes because people in power don't want to use their power to fix other people's mistakes. So that's a long introduction, but really what I want you to do is paint a picture for us of what life is like inside of Rikers. We're talking to Reese Hopkins, who was held for trial for 2.5 years and then was let free after his trial failed to bring him to conviction. So what can you tell us, Reese, about Rikers? What stands out to you?
The part that stands out to me is the let's just say the utter incompetence of the people who are in charge of your daily lives, and I say that through the correction officers. These are average people in charge of a very important job. And I hate to put it that way, but these are neighborhood people you would normally see in a neighborhood. I remember one of the correction officers actually lived down the road from my mom. They are not the most impressive people, and I don't say that to be an elitist. They just aren't. They're average stiffs doing a job that they are ill-equipped to do.
Why are they ill-equipped? Why are you putting the onus on them as opposed to systemic problems?
You're hired as a corrections officer to, in essence, be a babysitter. In a facility where people are being detained, they are not watching over people like you would in a prison or a penitentiary. This is not San Quentin. This is Rikers Island, where people are being detained until they see trial or until they're released for the amount of sentence they got. If they got 3 months, they'll do their 3 months in Rikers and then they're gone. So this is a babysitting facility at best. So the most average
short term, not serious criminals is what you're saying. Right. And there's not a prison on Rikers Island. It's all a jail.
Yeah, it's just a jail. It's a holding facility. So the people who are there are average individuals. These people do not have any martial arts training. Not that I'm suggesting that they do, but they have no physical combat training. Mm-hmm. These are not people who are former military. This is the average schmo who goes on the block and applies for a job to be a corrections officer, and then they go.
That's interesting.
Where they can go and where they can sit. and give them escorts to their courtroom or to the law library and things like that. So they're very average.
Okay, so this is low-level storage, holding of human beings while they're navigating the system, perhaps for the first time. Reese, hold on 1 second. We're going to get a quick break in, and we'll continue. Reese Hopkins is our guest. More coming up on WTIC.
Hi, this is Ray Dunaway.
And this is Brian Checkman on Tuesday. Hey, listen, Connecticut, we want to be number one at something?
Yeah.
Well, we're number one at something. According to a new investigative report, you, me, and everyone who lives in Connecticut carry a bigger per-person state debt burden than any other taxpayer in the country. That's right here in Connecticut.
Serious money, too. Also, why maybe you should talk to an elder law firm if you're thinking about hanging it up. Come, I'd like retiring, you know. Haley Allaire will be with us on WTIC News Talk 1080, WTIC.com. Interest rates have taken another nosedive, back down to record lows. Go Rascal is a new breed of mortgage, offering Hartford homeowners lower rates, super fast process, and zero junk fees. You can snag a better rate now and cut your house payment by hundreds a month. That's a car payment. And right now, to help you take advantage of lower rates, Go Rascal is doing zero closing cost refis for local homeowners. You can refinance your mortgage with no closing cost, no cash out of pocket, and lock into what may be the best rate of your lifetime. They're doing loans with rates in the twos. Go Rascal runs circles around the bank. And if you do a Go Rascal refi now, you can even skip your next house payment. Call Go Rascal, Hartford's newer, better, less expensive way to get a home loan. 860-996-8610. GoRascal.com. That's 860-996-8610. 996-8610. Equal housing lender, NMLS 2072-896. Not all loans apply. Subject to lender approval.
You take steps to stay healthy when at the pharmacy picking up vitamins or filling a prescription.
May I help you?
Take another healthy step right now and ask the pharmacist how Prevnar 13 can help protect you from pneumococcal pneumonia, a potentially serious bacterial lung disease. If you're 65 or older, a trip to the pharmacy is a lot more pleasant than a trip to the hospital because of pneumococcal pneumonia. Help protect yourself with the Prevnar 13 pneumococcal 13-valent conjugate vaccine, diphtheria CRM 197 protein. Prevnar 13 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 13 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Prevnar 13 does not protect against all strains of the disease. Stop by the pharmacy today and ask about Prevnar 13. Learn more at Prevnar13.com. Don't get Prevnar 13 if you have had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with a weakened immune system may have a lower response to the vaccine. The most commonly reported side effect was pain at the injection site. For additional common side effects and full prescribing information, please call 1-866-694-9300 or visit Prevnar13.com.
Right now, you're hearing all your favorite music on your favorite station. But wait, there's more.
More songs from the artists you love on exclusive stations by Odyssey.
Just open the Odyssey app and click exclusive stations, then a genre to dive deeper into.
A station might be just music, or maybe hosted by Ed Sheeran, Chris Martin, or one of your favorite DJs.
Across alternative, pop,
country, soft rock,
Latin, R&B,
kids,
and even more.
Get more with exclusive stations by Odyssey.
Brought to you by Macy's, Geico, and Coke Zero Sugar.
Miss something from the Todd Feinberg Show? Listen to the podcast on WTIC.com/podcast.
WTIC. It's a really weird environment that we live in right now. I mean, the world is going crazy. There's no question about it. And there does seem to be an ominous quality to where we are at. Particularly today, where all Facebook products, now that Facebook is under attack for being ruthless internet mercenaries, all of their products are offline right now. If you try to go to them and you can get through, please let us know. We'll be talking about that a little later. But along the same lines, we're talking to Reese Hopkins, and Reese is here to tell us about his time being held in Rikers Island awaiting trial and what that was like and what we've learned about the system. That's the idea. So Reese, you were describing what you saw inside the prison, and you're saying the COs, the correctional officers, are ill-equipped. Are you putting the blame for what goes on in Rikers on them? Why are you highlighting their being ill-equipped for this job?
I'm highlighting them because that is the reason for the violence that we are experiencing today, or we're reading about today in Rikers Island. I experienced it firsthand. Because these correction officers are not equipped to deal with the violence as it erupts inside.
They're not trained.
They're not.
You're saying you need like a professional army in there to keep this under control.
You know what? You do to some degree, but you need, and I'm not going to go this new leftist, proposed, conflict resolution sort of way. You have to deal with people who physically get involved with one another, meaning the people who are, or the detainees. When these people get into physical altercations with one another, the only thing that these corrections officers are equipped with is mace, and they spray it from a considerable distance away because they don't want to get into the fray. They don't, even though they have medical insurance and, compensation if they're injured, they don't want to be injured. They're not trained to get into that kind of melee.
Nobody does.
Yeah, exactly. Who does? Right. They're not what you consider like police officers who are known to run into buildings or run towards the danger. These corrections officers are, like I said earlier, are just regular, everyday schmoes who are hired to do a job, in essence, to babysit people who are detained until their trial date.
But it sounds like there are structural issues with the way it's run.
Of course.
Because job one is to create order. You have to be, the starting point has to be that there is order in this institution, and from there all other things would be built upon.
Well, it's hard to have that order when you have someone who is, I'll give you my example. We stayed in a dormitory. There are a lot of dorms inside Rikers Island, and that would be a unit that housed about 30 men in one place with a stack of beds. There are no cells. Some places do have cells where you get, but most people are free to roam about in the facility or in that particular unit. And those people who are walking around are not governed, in a sense, by a security officer or a corrections officer where this person has to sit there, or it's just someone sitting at a table watching a bunch of grown men as they watch TV or play dominoes or play checkers. And if something
in an environment that you're describing as being sort of like a barracks.
Yes, exactly. And then if something erupts, said corrections officer will run into an office and then alert the riot squad. That's how that operates. You go to the corrections officer to ask for things like soap or a pencil or a piece of paper. That's their job. They're literally your babysitter.
They're like the substitute teacher when the teacher's not there. So if you're dealing with people who are tough, if it's a rough and tumble environment, that would seem already to be a problem. That you really would need those. You would really need those riot guys right there in the prison.
Yes, but you have to wait a considerable amount of time before that unit even gets to your floor. When you're there, they're coming all the way from a main office, which is probably about a football field away from the unit that you're in. So it takes a considerable time for those people to then suit up and then get to the unit to where the altercation's taking place.
They have to be deployed. They're not ready to go.
Exactly.
And it sounds like what you're describing, if you're a prisoner in Rikers as you were, then it's mayhem at any given moment. There's the possibility of mayhem, and you've got to be on your toes all the time to avoid being injured. Is that a fair way to look at it? And then you would have all kinds of stress and tension affiliated.
Let me give you a horrible example about the mismanagement at Rikers Island.
Let me just tell you, we've got about 30 seconds, then we'll take a break for news, and then we'll talk more.
Well, let me just say that a gentleman had just been given over 85 years of a life sentence for murder who was in my dorm room. They put him back after his trial, after he had been convicted and sentenced. They brought him back to the same dorm unit, which is considered a very dangerous situation because bringing somebody back who has that much kind of time on their hands could then physically assault someone else who's still awaiting trial. Everyone at Rikers knew that, but they still returned him to the same facility instead of taking him off-site.
To keep him and everybody else safe, because at that point you have a convergence of motives and circumstances that is ripe for trouble.
To live for at that point.
Yes.
At that point he could snap and go off on anybody.
All right, hold on, Reese. We're going to get a news update. We'll continue the conversation about life in Rikers with Reese coming up on WTIC.
And now, a WTIC news update.
2:30 at 60 degrees and raining in Hartford. I'm Greg Little, WTIC 1080 News. Department of Community and Economic Development Commissioner David Lehman says the state has to be more competitive when it comes to manufacturing. Appearing before a public hearing, Lehman says the state has about 80,000 job openings and 100,000 on unemployment. Two factors are the skills gap and graying workforce. Leaked Pandora records show how the powerful Shield assets calls are growing for an end to the financial secrecy that allows that to happen. The outcry came after a report published revealed the way that world leaders, billionaires, and others have used offshore accounts to keep trillions of dollars out of government treasuries over the past quarter century, limiting the resources that can be put to work, helping the poor or combating climate change. Texas man who joined the mob that stormed the U.S. Capitol January 6th has been sentenced to 45 days behind bars. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkin handed down the sentence for Matthew Mazzarco today after she blasted comparisons between the riot and the Black Lives Matter protests over racial injustice. The judge's remarks came days after another judge in Washington's federal court suggested that the Justice Department was being too hard on the January 6th defendants compared to the people arrested during the protests after George Floyd's murder. From the WTIC 24-hour traffic center, we have delays in West Hartford 84 westbound between exits 43 and 40. Now here's the latest from the WTIC Weather Center.
It's going to remain cloudy and cool this afternoon with a light northeast wind. Temperatures in the upper 50s and low 60s and still a few scattered showers around. Tonight we'll see periods of rain and showers becoming more widespread again for a while. Areas of fog, lows in the 50s. Remaining cloudy Tuesday. There could be a lingering shower or two, though much of the day should be dry. Continued cool, highs in the upper 50s and low 60s. Dry Tuesday night with lows in the upper 40s to mid 50s. Becoming partly sunny Wednesday, the high around 70. I'm meteorologist Bob Cox in the WTIC Weather Center.
The Dow is down 363. S&P is down 66. NASDAQ is down 335. 60 degrees and raining in Hartford. I'm Greg Little, WTIC 1080 News.
Hi, this is Joel Johnson with Johnson Brunetti. I want to offer you my guide, which is called the 10-Step Layoff Survival Guide. With all the uncertainty out there in corporate America and the things that we've been through over the last year, you'll want to get a copy of this 10-Step Layoff Survival Guide. The 10 things you need to know, whether you take an early retirement offer or whether you're forced to retire. 1-800-208-SAFE. That's 1-800-208-SAFE. Call now. Get my 10-Step Layoff Survival Guide.
Investment advisory services offered through JB Capital, LLC, a registered investment advisor.
Rick Edelman, #1 New York Times best-selling author and founder of Edelman Financial Engines, takes questions on his radio show.
Hi, Rick. I have a pension and can take it as monthly income or a lump sum. Which do you think is better?
Well, the monthly check is only as safe as your employer's ability to pay it, and the amount will never rise, so inflation will erode its value. You have no access to the principal, and when you die, the money stops, even if you die tomorrow. So we usually recommend the lump sum. You get to invest the money however you want and generate your own income. You have full access anytime, and whatever's left over goes to your spouse or kids. But for some workers, the monthly option is better, so you should meet with a financial advisor to be sure that you're doing what's best for you.
That's Rick Edelman, founder of Edelman Financial Engines, with his advice on pensions. If you have a personal finance question, talk to an experienced financial planner at 888-PLAN-RICK or visit rickedelman.com.
What's up, everybody? Nick Costos here to tell you that Play Sugar House Sportsbook is bringing its best-in-class sports betting experience to Connecticut. Go to PlaySugarHouse.com now and sign up to get notified when Play Sugar House takes its first bets. You'll also be able to place bets at their retail locations at Winners and Bobby V's. Play Sugar House is the official sports betting partner of the Connecticut Lottery. Must be 21. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call Call 1-888-789-7777 or text CTGAMB to 53342.
Prescription products require an online consultation. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information.
Think you might have ED? Not sure? Well, we'd like to let you in on a little secret. ED is common. About 40% of men experience ED by age 40, but the solution is simple. Find it at 4hims.com.
I didn't have to talk to a doctor in person. There was no copay, and the medication was shipped right to my door in discreet packaging.
Hims took care of it, fast and easy. Now our love life is better than ever.
Get access to doctors online who can prescribe you FDA-approved ED medication if appropriate. The same active ingredient as name brands, but 90% cheaper. Skip the waiting rooms and pharmacy lines. Get a free medical consultation and rise to the occasion or your money back. Go to 4hims.com/radio to get your first visit free. No copay required. The only way to get this special offer is to go to 4hims.com/radio. FORHIMS.com/RADIO.
Todd Feinberg, now 2 till 6 on WTIC News Talk 1080.
WTIC. Many moons ago, I worked with Reese Hopkins on a radio station in Boston. He was a host there. And then he was arrested on charges in New York City for which he was not convicted, but it took 2.5 years before the legal process commenced. And in the meantime, he sat in Rikers Island. And Rikers Island is at the center of all kinds of controversy in New York because it is apparently a brutal place where the kind of malfeasance on the part of the system that I talk about all the time in Connecticut, it seems to me has gone to its logical extension way further down the road than the corruption in Connecticut has delivered us thus far. That corruption is that there is not really any professional management of the large governmental organizations that we construct and pay ridiculous amounts of money for. In Connecticut, it costs $60,000 or $70,000 a year to house a prisoner. In Rikers Island, stunningly, listen to this, it costs $500,000 for each prisoner. Now, there is, even in New York, there's no conceivable way, unless you're staying at the fanciest hotel in Manhattan, that you can justify that kind of cost, except that the purpose of these things has become taking care of the people who run the systems rather than the mission of the things they like to talk about, that they want to reform criminals, that they want to prepare people to return to normal life. That's the sales pitch. But that's got no more credibility than the idea that Mr. Whipple is standing in the corridor at the grocery store squeezing Charmin because it's so irresistibly soft. You know, these are nonsense campaigns on both sides. The government trying to legitimize itself in our eyes. They're just like Mr. Whipple. They're that ridiculous. These are institutions that create enormous destruction, not just of the lives of the prisoners, but by having a corrupt governmental agency that consumes way more money than it has any right to burn through, and requires that politicians who want to be part of a legitimate system become part of a lying, negative, destructive system in order that they don't have to blow up their careers to be in it or face some huge life-changing battle in order to create an honest environment around themselves. So that's why we're talking to Reese Hopkins and getting his description of Rikers. So that's the picture I'm looking at all the time, Reese, is that these machines have been kidnapped by the system to serve the needs of the system and no longer serve the needs of the people who pay for them. And that creates this huge gulf, this huge divergence between the talking points of those who operate the system and those who are paying for it. And you guys, you know, the people who get caught up by that machinery, you're what they call collateral damage, I guess.
Exactly. And it's funny, you were talking about $500,000. I was there for 2.5 years. That would put me at $1.5 million at best for what they
imagine that.
I never saw a dime of that. The chicken there wasn't that good, I promise you, and it was only served on Fridays. The late Maharishi used to call it the Democrat slush fund, and that's what the Public Worker Union is. And the correction department is exactly that. There's no way $500,000 is being paid towards every detainee at Rikers Island. That is going to the coffers of the correction. Well,
let's just put it in more general terms. There's no way even the Connecticut number of 60,000 is being spent with efficacy. These are inflated numbers that have built in a huge amount of waste that is meant to grease the wheels of a happy democratic machinery.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, with those type of numbers in New York alone, and here's where the outrage should be. If you think of the amount of people who are in Rikers Island, if $500,000 is being spent per year per detainee at Rikers Island, in no way should we be reading the horror stories that we're reading every day about Rikers Island, about the conditions, the death, the violence, none of it at that level. We don't.
Why would it be? I'm sorry, finish your thought.
No, I was going to say that we don't have any structure in our society that spends that kind of money. It would be, imagine if we had just transferred the word detainee and put that towards students in public education.
Yes.
Yes,
that would be extraordinary.
We'd be extraordinary what people would turn around and do if they find out that kind of violence was going on. Come on, we don't spend that kind of money on students in New York City. There's no way they're spending $500,000 on a detainee at Rikers Island.
When you heard about Jeffrey Epstein being murdered in prison, this was long after you were in Rikers, but you had this context that you brought to your perception, and you bring to your perception, having been there for 2.5 years, having seen the evils that go on inside those facilities and that are born of the system built under this umbrella of compassion. What exactly did you think about the question that was on everybody's minds and on their lips? How is it possible for a millionaire prisoner to be murdered while in prison? What was your answer to that question?
Well, I was actually at the Manhattan Detention Center when I was first locked up on October 27th at what would be considered the Manhattan version of Rikers. You're at the Manhattan Detention Center before you end up at Rikers. So I was at the location that Epstein subsequently died in. Here's something that a lot of people don't know. The guards do not do suicide watch. The detainees do. Now, if that is
what do you mean by that? Because we've been hearing in the news that those guards were neglectful, that they weren't doing their rounds to check and make sure that he was okay.
That was when I knew that story was bluster when I heard it. So when I first get into Rikers Island, I noticed that, when we're locked up in our cell, because I was in a cell room dorm at first. So in other words, there's a common area and then you go into your cells and you have to go in there by yourself at 11 o'clock. So 11 o'clock we end up there and I look out and I see one of the inmates who's walking around who's peeking into each cell door. Mm-hmm. And I asked the next day what that was about. And that individual, gets paid $23 a week to do suicide watch at night, because there are some people who are locked up who go through depression, who are scared, and some people are known to take their lives. They'll take their bed sheets and kill themselves, as you know. Mm-hmm. And this inmate is in charge with going from place to place, and he is to alert the corrections officer to then come down and to either open the door to then assist said person who might be trying to hurt himself. So the guards are not known. Now, is there a guard who will come in from time to time? Every hour he's supposed to come and do a head count. Some do, some do not. That's why they have hired. And this is a system inside Rikers Island. This isn't something that they're doing on their own. Your commissary is digital. So this is Rikers Island paying said inmate $23 a week to do that service. He is registered with the Rikers Island. That money goes into his account every week, and he is paid to run Suicide Watch.
Okay, but you're saying this was also true in the Manhattan Center where Epstein was held?
That is correct.
So it's kind of a dual system, it sounds like. So the inmate does this on a... Go ahead.
I'm telling you, I will put any amount of money on it that Jeffrey Epstein was not being watched by guards, was being watched by regular inmates.
Okay. And that means that you've got a system that's much easier to alter the course of, to invade from the outside. I mean, what's your theory of Jeffrey Epstein having... I know this is a little left field, but I just wonder how you process an event like that, given your experiences, knowing what the inside is like.
From what I learned the first days that I got in, when I found out that correction officers were just as corrupt as some of the people that they were prosecuting, nothing put it past me after the Epstein story that someone would be made available to cause him some harm. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, Todd, but that place is not, I'm just saying it's not beyond the pale. It isn't. I can't say with any concrete evidence that they did, but it's beyond the pale. It's just, for me, I shouldn't say that. Let me put it this way. I wouldn't put it past anyone in the Manhattan Detention Center or Rikers Island to make it available for someone to cause him harm.
And you're saying that it's easy enough to have that kind of thing happen if that's what the system wants to have happen.
Well, the system is, again, it's corrupt. I'll tell you a story outside of that. There are people in corrections, and that is officers, okay, who are just as corrupt and criminal as those of the people that they are there to watch. I know correction officers who are parts of gangs, a la Blood or Crip. I know corrections officers who brought in liquor and drugs as they began their shift. I knew corrections officers who were having physical relationships with inmates, several. This was something I experienced in 2 years. The corruption, after a while, starts to seep out when you're there for so long. And I was moved around a lot, and you can see it. So for someone to get into or inside that Manhattan Detention Center to do harm to Jeffrey Epstein, no, isn't beyond the pale.
It's easy, it sounds like.
Completely.
Because you're talking about a diseased system that doesn't really have protocols, that doesn't follow whatever protocols are written down, and where people and their goals can find their way to execution. So that means that when you said the prison guard was bringing in booze and drugs, this was to sell to prisoners?
Yes. This not only to sell to prisoners, but some of them were getting paid on the outside by family members to get booze and drugs into the prisoners. Because, again, these people are from the neighborhoods of some of the people who are locked up.
Yeah, so there's a community aspect to it. All right, Reese, hold on 1 second, Reese. We go take a quick break. Hold on a second. You can tell us about that in a minute. Quick break. More with Reese Hopkins coming up on WTIC.
Access Health CT is the state's official health insurance marketplace, and they have great news. If you've been looking for better health insurance, a better deal, residents now have more time to shop, compare, and enroll, and they may qualify for $0 plans. Thanks to the new Covered Connecticut program created by the state, parents and caregivers that meet certain income requirements will now pay $0 per month for health insurance. Get started and find free help at accesshealthct.com.
Nielsen says more than 30 million Americans are now tuning into Newsmax TV because Newsmax Newsmax is the hot thing. It's one of the biggest media sources. Newsmax is available on all major cable systems. And if you cut the cord and don't get cable, you can still get Newsmax. Find it on your smart TVs like Samsung, LG, and others. Just go to your smart TV channel guide. Newsmax also streams free on Roku, Zumo, Pluto, Amazon Fire, and TiVo. Plus, 7 million people have the Newsmax app on their phone. It only takes seconds to download the app. No paywall, no subscription. So watch Newsmax TV for breaking news anytime, anywhere. President Trump says Newsmax is really good, and Forbes calls Newsmax a news powerhouse. Find out why tens of millions of Americans are watching Newsmax TV and why we're going to Newsmax.com for breaking news. It's a source I trust, and you can too. Watch Newsmax TV today.
Talking about our mental health has the power to save lives. We witnessed that firsthand with Odyssey's I'm Listening mental health special. Kevin Love, Justin Bieber, Robin Williams' son Zach, and more shared wonderful insight and some tips for coping. If you missed the special or want to hear it again, it's on the Odyssey app and Odyssey.com right now. And please remember, you're definitely not alone. Hear I'm Listening now on the Odyssey app. Brought to you by The Village and its mental health providers, where real change happens. Visit thevillage.org to learn more.
Early estate planning is crucial if you want to protect your assets and avoid massive tax consequences. Cushing & Dolan are experts in estate planning and taxation. Don't leave your assets unprotected. Get their brand new free guide, available right now, called Balancing Estate Tax Reductions with Asset Protection Strategies. In it, you'll learn how to keep your assets and your family end away from the nursing home while reducing and potentially eliminating your estate taxes. Call 866-848-5699 or download the guide right now from our website, legalexchangeshow.com.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop to opt out. Dispatch Health is an equal opportunity employer.
Attention all Hartford area nurse practitioners, physician associates, and medical technicians. Dispatch Health is hiring right now. We are looking for great people who care about patients. We are on a mission to provide better health care by keeping people in their homes. Being a part of Dispatch Health offers competitive salaries and benefits and the opportunity to work in the new frontier of providing a high level of care outside of hospital settings right in patient homes. Want to take your career to the next level? Text PROVIDE to 323232 right now. Grow your career with a rapidly scaling company redefining healthcare delivery. By caring for people at home, we improve outcomes, lower costs, and offer much higher satisfaction to patients and providers. If you're a nurse practitioner, physician associate, or medical technician dedicated to making a difference, we need you. Just text PROVIDE to 323232. We are hiring right now in Hartford. Text the word PROVIDE to 323232. Text PROVIDE to 323232.
Something from the Todd Feinberg Show? Listen to the podcast on WTIC.com/podcast.
WTIC, it's beyond our ability to imagine such a thing, being plucked out of our lives and put into jail in New York City at the infamous Rikers Island for 2.5 years awaiting trial. And this is what happened to Reese Hopkins, who spent that 2.5 years there, then went to trial, refusing to accept a plea deal. And it wasn't an outright acquittal, as I understand it, but a hung jury, and that was the end of it. They didn't want to pursue the case anymore. This is a remarkable thing, I think, and a problem with our system, that you can be grabbed by the machinery of quote-unquote justice and be put on a conveyor belt through hell. And it seems to me that that's what it's like, Reese. What does that feel like? It must be incredible to find a way to maintain a positive attitude and a survival mentality through all that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest. There were times when I thought I wasn't going to make it out of there alive. It was probably the most daunting experience I've ever had in my entire life. I thought my life was over. And, yeah, because of the machine, as you were describing it, I thought that the machine was so big I I couldn't beat it. And I knew I was innocent, but I just knew that once I had been sort of shackled up, and I use that term figuratively and literally, once I had been shackled up in that system, I thought that there was no hope for me. It was over. And
you felt you were in a machine that had no humanity and no way for your particular circumstances to be viewed and acknowledged and realized.
No, and I knew, that's the thing, Todd. Not only did I know I was innocent, they knew I was innocent. Not only did I know I wasn't living in New York at the time of the time of the crime or the crime itself, they knew it, and I knew they knew it. And it mattered not to them or to anyone. And no one wanted to cover my story. No one wanted to advocate for me, and I was by myself, and I thought, that was it. It's over. And in May of 2010, I was very much going to kill myself.
And what happened?
I got a bit of good news. And it was that someone told me that I was going to be getting some very, very important information about the accuser that was going to give me hope. And I thought it was. I really thought that it was going to give me hope. It didn't. But someone talked me into fighting and said that if you fight for anything in your life, fight for this. If you didn't do it, fight for this. Because once you're gone, nobody's going to fight for you. It's obvious. Once you're gone, you're dead. Nobody's going to fight for you. They're just going to turn the page and they're going to go. Use your arrogance and your, as everybody always said that I was an arrogant person, but here's an opportunity to use your arrogance for good. Prove these sons of a gun that you didn't do this and stick out and fight it. And I had to decide if no one was going to fight for my life, I had to. And that was when I contacted CNN, and they finally came out and did the interview with me, and that was when I got that plea deal. And when I saw that they flinched, that's when I knew I had a fighting chance.
So, Reese, we've got about 90 seconds left. What do you want us to know?
Well, I'm still doing my podcast. It's Reese on the Radio. If you're interested in ever checking it out, it's weeknights, I should say, at 9 p.m. Eastern. Just go to ReeseOnTheRadio.com, and Reese is spelled with an S. It's ReeseOnTheRadio.com. And I'm fighting a good fight like you are, Todd. I've been a conservative since I was 10 years old. We are living in a world where our civil liberties are being challenged every day. I know it firsthand. I lived 2.5 years where my civil liberties were violated. So I won't let this government or any other government take those away from us. And I will fight, whether it's with one listener or 1 million. I will do what it is that's required of me to fight against the oligarchy that is social media and our political system.
And do you view the system any differently based on the experience that you had before and after?
Yeah. This is a political machine. And to give you the perspective, you probably don't know this, but it is in court documents. The prosecutor, Rachel Ferrari, said, and I quote, "Reese Hopkins is a neocon, and they are the most reviled political group in New York City."
Wow. That's pretty wild.
Yes, it is. At a trial. That's what my prosecutor said. And I knew this was about politics from the get-go. I'm a black conservative, and that was an enemy of the state.
Really? That's what you think motivated the whole thing?
I'm 100% sure because I have the emails to prove it.
Well, can I see those? I want to see those emails. Yeah?
Yeah, of course you can.
All right. Reese Hopkins, thanks for taking the time to do this. The website again for your podcast, if people want to listen. I want to listen.
Yeah, ReeseOnTheRadio.com, 9 p.m. Eastern, and you can find me on Facebook as well. It's just Reese on the Radio.
REESE on the radio.com.
That's correct.
Reese Hopkins, thank you, sir. Delightful to talk with you.
I'd love to have you on my show, man.
Yeah, anytime. Just let me know when you want to do it.
All right.
Thank you, Reese. All right, so there's a story. This is just a kind of an introduction of a